born in the late 70s and I grew up in Footscray. I think sexuality as a kid was a lot less conscious, and so that idea of like sexual gender roles was kind of to do with play, and people were kind of just people. I knew from TV and movies and my brother that a girl wasn't quite as good as a boy. The expectations were very different, especially within my family, and that was hard, and it really made me question gender. Understanding that queer was different kind of didn't come later until I was a teenager, and I'd try and make out with my friends and they'd call me lesbian, and it was a derogatory term, and trying to work out why that was a derogatory term and why that mattered at all. For me, I don't think that gender is a huge idea. It's more of how you represent yourself in the world, and I see it as very fluid, and you can be confident with it, but it doesn't have to be all that you are, and it can change really easily. So I went to art school and somebody asked me what I was, and I guess I'd never really considered it. And at the time my answer was, I'm straight, but I'm totally in love with my best friend who's a girl. And that was the point where I went, oh wait, no, that means something. And I think sometimes until you have that question, you just don't. You just think what you do and what you think is normal and part of everything and part of what's around you. It was the point where all of those childhood ideas kind of confronted me and made me kind of more aware of what I wanted from the world and what I wanted from a partner. The girl who asked me what I was, I ended up living with her and her girlfriend, and I told my mum that I was bisexual, and she told me that I just wanted to be like my friends and it was a phase. It was incredibly insulting, but I was also an angry teenager, so it kind of just fit that nobody understands me kind of time, and it also meant that I was willing to go outside of the West and outside of my comfort zone in order to find a place and people that I connected with. I just baffled her when my first serious relationship was with a boy, and it kind of proved that it was just a phase thing. And then when that ended and I brought home a woman instead, my mum was like, oh right, okay, you were serious, you meant what you said. So I got her to tell my dad, and he struggled with it a little. He was at the optometrist once, and my girlfriend and I were helping him pick out frames because it was fun, and the optometrist presumed that we were sisters, and my dad said that the turning point for him was where he had to contradict the optometrist rather than pretend and go, oh yeah, my daughters. And I don't think he really had an idea that people were treated in that kind of heteronormative way until then. I think it's up to every individual, but for me, I felt like coming out was important because then I could let it go and not worry too much about it. So I come out regularly, and it's now just part of getting to know anyone. You just know that there's going to have to be a point where you have to correct them. For a long time I've called myself bisexual, but I've had some time off work, and it's meant that I've got to read a lot. And at first I kind of was looking at feminist identity, and that kind of drew me to more transgender issues. I like the idea of like pansexual instead. I think it's a lot less exclusive. The language of it really appeals to me. For me, it means being drawn to people, not regardless of their gender, but the way that their gender is part of them, whatever that gender is. I was walking down the street with my male fiance, and he had long hair, and he was quite effeminate looking, and just like screams, and we were called fucking hippie fags. I see those kind of as opportunities to expose people rather than disadvantages. I think it's really important for everybody to have friends of a lot of different diverse backgrounds of ideas, but I think especially for queer people. One of the reasons I really like the term queer is that it brings together people with lots of differences. It can kind of open you up and make you realise your own privilege in the way that you think. There's incredible similarities in people's stories, especially when they're younger and just working things out, that I really respond to, that I love. So I think the focus at the moment is on marriage equality, and I think that a lot of that is about that kind of normative idea that this is what everybody does and it's part of it. I'd like to see a much broader focus, and I don't think that that needs to be the pinnacle of political activism anymore. I would prefer to see more of a cultural awareness and an understanding of diversity. So I wanted to skateboard years ago, and if you go down to like a rink, or if you go to like a bowl or something like that, there's a lot of teenage boys that will just kind of laugh at you because you're old and awkward and don't know what you're doing. But roller derby is all about getting other people hooked. I went to see my first game at the Chill Out Festival in Dalesford and was immediately addicted after a lifetime of hating sport. It was a co-ed game, so men and women playing with each other, and it's an incredibly physical game, so it's quite intimidating to see people with that aggressive element, but regardless of gender. My partner and I went down to the local roller skating rink and started to learn how to skate, and found that they were putting together a league, and we kind of started our own roller derby league. I think we always wanted to have a very open access policy. Gender diversity and sexuality diversity isn't really an issue. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of referees, I'm one of them. As a whole, because it's a women's sport, a lot of the time the players are women and the referees are men. So I was naturally drawn to doing it the opposite. Plus, I just want people not to hit each other too hard. I don't want people to get hurt. There's an incredibly diverse range of people who are drawn to roller derby for a really huge different reasons. For some people, the alter ego really helps. It brings them out of themselves, and they say that in their normal life they start to see part of that strength come in. Roller derby's really opened up because it's introduced me to lots of different people, so it means that most of the people I know do live out west. Within the western suburbs, I want to see queer people represented within cultural events especially, and I would love to see more of an intersection between race and ethnicity and sexuality and gender being performed in film and art and music. I don't think art is for artists. I think it's for everyone to become involved in a way that kind of is the most meaningful to them. For our league, we had some Americans come over, and I used to take them on tours through Melbourne, and the one thing that I wanted them to find out was that in Melbourne, all of the good stuff's kind of hidden, and those are the places you have to explore, and that's very western suburbs. You have to look underneath things.